Imagine a place where there are no laws or police, where the people themselves decide what is right or wrong. Well, that place really exists, and many people are moving there. Besides this unique case, there are also countries with crazy laws that seem like a lie, like being forbidden to chew gum or even forbidden to die. This is exactly what we will see here today. In some places in the world, even the simplest actions can cause a huge headache. A good example of this comes from Thailand. There, something apparently harmless, like stepping on a banknote, can take you straight to the police station. It may seem exaggerated, but there is a very serious cultural explanation behind it. All Thai notes and coins bear the image of the king, a figure deeply respected in the country. So, when someone steps on or treats money carelessly, the act is interpreted as a direct disrespect to the monarchy, which over there is a crime. Thailand has very strict laws when it comes to the royal family. The so-called crime of lèse majesté can lead to from 3 to 15 years in prison for those who insult or offend the king, the queen, or their ancestors, and that even includes the face printed on the banknotes. That is why tourists are always advised never to put their wallets in the back pocket, to avoid any misunderstanding. And this is not the only curious rule in the country. It is also forbidden to offend images of Buddha, something that has already caused serious problems for unsuspecting travelers. So, if one day you are in Thailand and the wind carries a banknote out of your pocket, do not step on it to pin it down. Pick it up carefully so you do not get arrested, since even money deserves reverence. In Japan, the death penalty has a detail that makes everything even darker. There, those sentenced never know the day they will be executed. They receive the notice only 1 hour before everything happens, enough time for a quick prayer or a last meal. That constant uncertainty is already considered by many to be part of the punishment itself. The prisoner wakes up every day without knowing whether they will see the sunset. The method used is still hanging, carried out in total secrecy inside prisons like the one in Tokyo. 3 officers press buttons at the same time without knowing which of them triggered the trapdoor, a way of sharing the burden. Until 2020, not even the families of the victims were notified in advance. Only after the execution did the government release the names and crimes of the condemned. Between 2012 and 2016, 24 people were executed, and the annual number rarely exceeds 10. Even so, most Japanese people support the death penalty. A survey from 2015 showed that 80% of the population is in favor of the practice. Activists, on the other hand, criticize the secrecy and the psychological impact that this waiting causes on prisoners. In 2010, the then Minister of Justice, Keiko Chiba, even opened the execution chamber to the press, a cold and silent place with the smell of incense and immaculate carpet. She wanted to provoke debate, but in a country where order and punishment walk side by side, silence still speaks louder. In Singapore, a simple piece of chewing gum can become a police matter. Since 1992, the government has totally banned the sale and consumption of chewing gum, and the reason is at the very least curious. At the time, someone stuck a piece of chewing gum on the automatic door of the subway and jammed the entire transport system for hours. That caused a true urban chaos, and the country decided to end the problem once and for all. From then on, chewing gum became a serious matter. Sales were banned, and it is only allowed to buy medicinal versions in pharmacies with a medical prescription and passport in hand. Enforcement across the country is quite strict. Littering, spitting, smoking in prohibited areas, or even jaywalking can result in very high fines. In some cases, those who repeat the infraction must clean the streets under the gaze of cameras, and sometimes even the press. But that rigor has a visible result, since Singapore is one of the cleanest and most organized countries on the planet. Its immaculate streets and gleaming subways are a source of national pride. In Germany, driving without fuel can cause more trouble than it seems. If the car stops on the Autobahn, the famous highway with no speed limit, the driver can be fined, and it is no use saying it was just bad luck. The reasoning behind this rule comes from the fact that the Autobahns are designed for fast and constant traffic, so being stopped there is considered a lack of planning and, of course, a huge risk. Therefore, the German traffic code treats running out of gas as driver negligence. The punishment can include a fine, loss of points on the license, and even the need to pay for the costs of the rescue operation, since stopping on the shoulder is allowed only in real emergencies, such as mechanical failure or an accident. On these roads, you can drive at 300 kilometers per hour. There is literally no speed limit in some stretches. The German logic is more or less like saying that if you want to go fast, that is fine, but you have to do it responsibly. In other words, letting the tank hit empty is not just a slip-up, it is a guaranteed fine, and maybe a reminder that the fuel gauge deserves more attention than many people give it. In some countries, justice goes far beyond written laws. One of the most striking examples of this comes from Iran. There is a rule that allows the victim's family to decide the fate of the convicted person in certain cases of serious crimes, such as murders or attacks against honor. After the sentence is defined, the victim's relatives have the right to choose whether the defendant will be executed or will receive forgiveness. It is literally a life or death decision in the hands of the family itself. One of the best-known cases happened when a man convicted of taking another's life was taken to the place of execution. He already had the rope around his neck when the victim's father suddenly approached and forgave him. The gesture, which shocked the country, interrupted the execution seconds before the end. But not everyone has the same fate. In other episodes, families chose to proceed with the punishment, even in the face of pleas for clemency. The law, known as qisas, is based on a principle of retribution, something like an eye for an eye, which is part of Iran's legal tradition. While for some this represents direct and moral justice, for others it is a controversial practice that mixes pain, forgiveness, and revenge in a decision no one would want to carry. In the end, Iran shows that in certain places, justice can be as human as it is relentless, and forgiveness, when it happens, is worth more than the judicial sentence itself. In several countries, the world's strangest laws seem like a joke, but this one, despite being absurd, truly exists. In China, it is illegal to reincarnate without government authorization. Yes, you understood correctly. Even to come back to life, you need to ask for permission. The rule has existed since 2007 and has a very specific target: Tibetan monks, especially the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibet. The idea arose when Beijing decided to control the succession process of religious figures of Tibetan Buddhism, who traditionally believe that their masters reincarnate in new children after 49 days. According to the norms, any Lama who returns must have been born within China and can only be recognized as a reincarnation with the government's approval. The official justification would be to better organize religious practices, but critics say it is a way to limit the power and influence of the Dalai Lama, who has lived in exile in India since 1959. The leader, now over 90 years old, has already said he may end his line of reincarnations to prevent Beijing from choosing an official successor. If that happens, there are those who say the world may see two Dalai Lamas, one recognized by traditional monks and another by the Chinese government. As absurd as it may seem, this law is still in force, and it shows how, in China, even the cycle of life and death must follow the rules of the state. In the United States of America, one of the toughest and also most controversial laws is the so-called three strikes law. Basically, if a person with two serious convictions commits another serious crime, they can get life imprisonment, even if the new offense is minor. The expression comes from baseball, where with 3 strikes, you are out. But in practice, this policy ended up sending many people out of society for good. Created in 1994 in California, after a young woman named Kimber Reynolds was murdered, the law was born from the movement of her father, Mike Reynolds, who wanted to toughen penalties for repeat offenders. The problem is that the text was applied so strictly that absurd cases began to appear. One example is Leandro Andrade, sentenced to 50 years in prison for attempting to steal videotapes from a store. That was because he already had other records for minor crimes. Overcrowding also became even more chaotic. Prisons designed for 80,000 people began to house more than 120,000 inmates. Critics say the law increased public spending and hardly reduced crime. It only filled the prisons. In recent years, the state of California itself reviewed the rules, limiting the use of the law to truly violent crimes. Still, 3 strikes continues to generate debate, being one of the most controversial laws in the American penal system. There is a place in California where there are no laws, police, government, or taxes, and even so, people live there. The name is Slab City, a community in the middle of the Sonoran Desert known as the last free place in America. The place arose from the ruins of an World War II military base called Camp Dunlap. When the army dismantled everything, only the concrete foundations, the slabs, remained, and it was there that a group of veterans began to camp. Over time came artists, travelers, retirees, and anyone who simply wanted to live outside society's rules. Today, Slab City is a mix of trailers, tents, and improvised constructions. There is no running water, electricity, or garbage collection. Power comes from solar panels and water from trucks that arrive from time to time. In the summer, temperatures easily exceed 45 degrees Celsius, and even so, about 150 people live there all year round. Despite the apparent chaos, the community has its own rules. They are informal but respected. There is a library made by residents, an open-air stage called The Range, and even a colorful beautiful mountain covered with murals, Salvation Mountain, created by a local artist. Slab City is seen by some as a paradise of freedom, by others as a portrait of abandonment. There is no government, but there is also no security, sanitation, or guarantees. Even so, for those who live there, living without laws is precisely what makes the place worthwhile. In Singapore, one of the strictest laws in the world remains firm, even when the rest of the planet follows the opposite path. In April of 2023, Tanggaraju Supia, 46 years old, was executed for attempting to traffic about 1 kilogram of herb. The case generated international protests, pleas for clemency, and reignited the debate about the country's extreme policies against illegal substances. Tanggaraju was convicted in 2018, accused of having communicated by phone with 2 men involved in the attempt to smuggle the herb into the country. He denied having participated directly and, according to family and human rights groups, the evidence was weak. The cell phones were never seized, and part of the investigation was based on statements made without a lawyer or translator. Even so, all appeals were denied. Organizations such as the United Nations, the European Union, and Amnesty International asked Singapore to suspend the execution, stating that the trial did not guarantee a fair process. But the government did not yield. In an official note, it stated that the death penalty is essential to keep the country safe and that it serves to prevent trafficking. The contrast draws attention. While neighboring countries such as Malaysia and Thailand reduced or abolished such penalties, Singapore continues to apply the maximum sentence for crimes linked to illicit substances. Tanggaraju's story shows how much Singapore maintains its image as a disciplined country at a price that part of the world already considers too high. They say that in Scotland, if someone knocks on your door asking to use the bathroom, you are legally obliged to let them in. Strange, right? Denying the request would be a violation of Scottish hospitality, something almost sacred there. This story has circulated for so long that many people really believe it exists in the law books. In fact, in 2008, it was elected one of the 5 most absurd laws in the United Kingdom, in a vote by The Telegraph, a renowned news outlet. Only there is no such record in Scottish legislation. Legal experts have already confirmed that there is no law forcing anyone to let strangers use the bathroom at home. What exists is a cultural tradition, passed down from generation to generation, that values kindness and hospitality. For centuries, when there were almost no public restrooms, it was common for travelers to ask for shelter or help in local houses and, as a courtesy, be accommodated. Over time, this custom became an urban legend that many took as truth. Today, refusing a stranger's request may even be seen as impolite, but it is not a crime. That is, if someone shows up at your door, in Scotland, asking to use the bathroom, the choice is yours. You can open the door out of kindness, but not because the law commands it. That so-called bathroom law is just another of the world's traditions that end up being confused with government laws. They say that in the United Kingdom there is a law that forbids dying inside Parliament. Yes, that is right. Dying would technically be a crime if it happened within the premises of the Palace of Westminster, where the House of Commons and the House of Lords are located. Since the building is considered a royal palace, anyone who died in there would, by law, be entitled to a funeral with state honors. To avoid that bureaucratic headache and the expenses that would come with it, King Edward II, in 1313, would have officially forbidden anyone from passing away inside Parliament. This story travels the world as one of the most absurd laws ever created, cited in lists, articles, and curiosity videos for years. And let us be honest, it has everything a good legend needs: a touch of royalty, a plausible absurdity, and that air of British tradition that makes it seem like it can only be true. But it is not. In practice, this law never existed. No official record in the United Kingdom mentions anything like that. British legal experts guarantee that it is nothing more than a myth, probably born from confusion with the royal status of the building. Even so, the rumor continues to circulate to this day, repeated by so many people that it has become almost part of modern British folklore. Don't forget to subscribe so you can watch more videos like this.